Hi there. As you have entered AENG 201, you've probably read the sign above the door. It reads, "Abandon all hope, ye who enter here." And I want to give you hope. It's a difficult thing to enter a literature class. By the way, that quote is from Dante's Inferno, a trip to hell. And hopefully this isn't that kind of experience for you. But I want you to realize that as a literature student, you're doing something noble in my mind. You're becoming a part of the human story in a way that maybe you haven't felt you could before. Some of you are avid readers. Some of you are engaged in literature all the time. And I just want to say, not everybody gets that privilege, and not everybody has that burden to bear. But I believe this is a noble thing that you get to do, and I get to do it with you. And so what I want to do here, very quickly and as efficiently as I can, I want to show you how to analyze literature. You'll be asked in AENG 201 to create 4 close reading assignments. Close reading is what we've come to call the process of analysis in literature. What it means is that you are now going to try to be a scientist of literature. You're going to try to examine a text, and traditionally it's a paper text that usually is fiction. You're going to try to examine that text through a microscope. And what I am trying to do in this course is to give you several ways, several lenses through which you can see literature. We call these lenses elements, and these are specifically the MIDAS elements. The MIDAS elements, first of all, you know that Midas was a king in ancient Greece in mythology, and he received this magical power to touch things and they turned to gold. Only he used it a little too much and was careless, and he ended up giving his daughter a hug, and that is the sad end to that tale, and a cautionary tale for all of us. Sometimes you can get so close to things that instead of turning them to gold, they turn to ashes. So if you have been the kind of person who hates it when people analyze literature and you just want to read a story for pleasure, please go right ahead. I'm not here to spoil it for you, but these MIDAS elements, I believe, do have the power to give you even more enjoyment as you read a story. You can do this with a short story. You can do it with a longer story, a novel. You can even do it with a movie or a play. And sometimes you can do it with a poem, but there's a whole other set of conditions for a poem. So we're going to be talking about longer texts. And what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to use these MIDAS elements to get to the heart of the text. And you can't just study a whole text, a whole novel all at once. You have to take small bite-sized chunks, and we call these passages. And so one passage typically is a half page to a page in a normal novel. And when you're reading a poem like the Iliad, you will want to take 25 lines of the poem to 75 lines. It's about the same length. But remember, poetry is compressed language. It's compact. And so there's so much you can get out of just a few lines of poetry. Well, I'm already 4 minutes into this video, and I haven't really helped you that much, but let's cut to the chase. The MIDAS elements are metaphor, imagery, diction, allusion, and syntax. Each of these is important in its own way, but generally in a passage, you might only find 2 or 3 elements that jump out at you. I want to push you to get at least 2 and hopefully 3 elements out of any passage that you analyze. The assignment on Blackboard asks you to write more than you're analyzing, essentially. You're writing 300 to 500 words about a 25 to 75 line passage from the Iliad, or a half page to a page from the Pilgrim's Progress. How do you do that? How do you write more than you start with? Well, that's the beauty, is when you read, you are able to unpack what's there. And so it's this unpacking that is your job. Here's how you should start. I recommend that, like a scientist, you go through a passage, making notes, trying to read each, not line by line, but each thought by thought. And when you take one thought and you think about what it's telling you, and you go through all of the MIDAS elements to kind of check them off, is there a metaphor? Is there any imagery? That will help you, and you can make notes. With a poem, sometimes you can make those notes right in the margin, or if you're like me, you use a computer for everything, then get in the habit of going back and forth from the text to a note document. Sometimes people use note cards and Post-its and things like that. Everything is great, whatever you're comfortable with. But you've got to take notes. Now, I don't recommend that you turn those notes immediately into writing of your own, because what will happen is you'll find a metaphor here, and then a little imagery, and then a little diction, but then you'll go back to metaphor, and then you'll go to syntax, and that's very haphazard. I think as a reader of analysis like that, it tends to make me confused about what the point is. Now, I want to go now to how you should write. You always build in support of a thesis. A thesis is one sentence, as you probably learned in this course or elsewhere. One sentence that makes a statement, an assertion about whatever it is you're analyzing. Now, in this case, you're analyzing 25 to 75 lines, and you want to make a claim. And then the rest of your writing should be supporting that claim. So you're going to pick and choose from your notes what things support your claim. A very good way then is to have the first sentence be your thesis statement, or your topic sentence. Then you want to provide a little bit of context, 2 or 3 sentences that say, where does this passage come from in this longer work of literature? What's going on before it? What does it lead up to? Give us some understanding of what these words signify. And please choose carefully. Choose a passage. That's the beauty. You get to choose your own passage, but choose it based on your interests. And in the scope of this course, you want to choose it based on your motif, your culpa motif. If you don't know what that is, that's a whole other video. But the main thing is choose a passage that seems to speak to your motif in some way. I love divergent thinking. I love creative thinking. So don't be afraid to stretch marriage into other relationships, or stretching food into anything that is nourishment of some kind. So I want you to know that organization is key. Maybe you want to make a little paragraph that is your thesis and the context, and then you go to a new paragraph. And that new paragraph should have some sort of topic sentence too. In fact, every paragraph you write should have a topic sentence pretty much right at the very first sentence. And you can include a transition word. So if my thesis is marriage is an important part of Greek society, and you talk about Hector going home to meet his wife in Troy, kind of this break in the battle, then you've given the context. Then you go on in the next paragraph and say, first of all, or this importance is shown by, and then you go into the elements. And I would say organizing your paragraphs around the elements that you are addressing is a great technique. So maybe the first one is about imagery, and you look through all your notes and you find the ones that talk about the imagery, and you try and see a pattern in the imagery. Is there imagery from nature? Is there imagery from war, even though you're on the home front? Is there fighting going on? Is there tension? So that's something that you can speak to. People fight about things that are important to them. So maybe you want to talk about that imagery first, and then the second one, the next paragraph, you could talk about diction. Now, diction is a little bit different. It's how you say things. Are there a lot of questions that are asked? Are there side notes that are given? Is anything in italics to show that it's special and set apart? I mean, that basically is your analysis. You can add a little short conclusion paragraph if you'd like, but remember, you already have the thesis, and that's the key. And I want you to think of your writing as pillars that support that thesis on top. And I want you especially to try to use direct quotations, short, direct quotations in quotation marks with a citation in APA style right after it. And when you use quotations, don't use a complete sentence. Just use a portion of a sentence and then blend that portion with introductory words that make the whole sentence flow. So you might say something like, Homer says that marriage is a fertile ground for conversation, whatever it might be. So fertile ground, again, I'm using an image there from nature. I might comment on that. But the point is, I've used just a brief quotation and I've blended it with the rest of the sentence. And that is an art form, and you'll get better and better at it as you do it more. So I hope that this basic structure for creating your close reading assignments, your literary analysis assignments, I hope this helps. And remember that you're going to use portions of these analysis assignments for your big culpa paper. It's almost 12 minutes now. I'm sure you've got other things to do with your life. Maybe go and read a good book. Have a great day.